On this Saturday night, Iran peace talks collapse. President Trump cancels the U.S. delegation's trip to Pakistan.
We'll deal by telephone, and they can call us anytime they want.
What it means for the war and global oil prices. Spring snowstorm.
Nobody had given us any warnings of what we were up against here.
Drivers are stranded for nearly 24 hours after high winds and snow slam into Alberta. Plus, why climatologists are warning to expect more extreme weather this summer. And paying tribute to a trailblazer, the 101-year-old Montrealer who dedicated her life to the fight for civil rights.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with another major setback in the efforts to secure a peace deal with Iran. Negotiations between Washington and Tehran were supposed to happen this weekend in Pakistan, but those talks collapsed before they even began. Iran's top diplomat left Islamabad before the U.S. delegation even arrived. Then President Donald Trump announced that he was canceling their trip. Almost immediately, Israel's prime minister said his military would resume strikes in Lebanon, but it's unclear what this means for the fragile ceasefire in Iran and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Candice Cole has our top story tonight.
You probably heard that we canceled the trip. We have all the cards. We're not going to spend.
In a sharp and sudden turnaround, U.S. President Donald Trump canceled a trip for Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner to Pakistan to broker another round of peace talks with Iran, posting Saturday that it's too much time wasted on traveling, too much work, blaming tremendous infighting and confusion within the Iranian government for the about-face.
We're not going to spend 15 hours in airplanes all the time going back and forth to be giving a document that was not good enough. And so we'll deal by telephone, and they can call us anytime they want.
This as Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi posted this video of his, quote, very fruitful visit with Pakistan's prime minister, saying both countries want to find a workable framework to end the war and questioning the U.S.'s sincerity about finding a diplomatic solution. When asked if this breakdown of the peace talks would mean a return to fighting, Trump told Axios, quote, no, it doesn't mean that. We haven't thought about it yet. But that's not the case in Lebanon, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the military to ramp up attacks on Hezbollah targets, despite an extension of the ceasefire between the two countries. This as Lebanese civilians continue to return home and oil markets remain volatile. Just last week, the Trump administration threatened possible military action over Iran's reclosure of the Strait of Hormuz, over the U.S.'s continued blockade of Iranian ports. But experts warn military action is not the answer.
The U.S. cannot keep the Strait of Hormuz open militarily, unfortunately. So, yeah, we've bombed Iran tremendously. We can bomb them some more. That's not going to change any of the salient facts regarding what Iran is willing to do with its nuclear program, the Strait, and Lebanon.
Energy prices remain high around the world as the war with Iran now enters its 9th week. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
A bit of much-needed good news from the Middle East. Palestinians in Gaza took part in local elections today for the first time in 2 decades. The vote, which was largely symbolic, was held in the city of Deir al-Balah. Around 70,000 voters were eligible to cast ballots in improvised polling stations, including tents, since many schools are still being used as shelters. The vote is being run by the Palestinian Authority, which administers the West Bank. The PA is trying to reestablish a political foothold in Gaza to displace Hamas. Turning to the war in Ukraine now, a major Russian drone and missile attack killed at least 7 people and injured dozens more. The overnight barrage struck an apartment building in Dnipro, Ukraine's 4th largest city. Several other regions were also targeted by hundreds of drones. Ukraine returned fire, striking deep inside Russian territory. Turning to news here at home now, hundreds of drivers stranded on an Alberta highway have finally been freed after a spring snowstorm caused chaos on the roads. Violent winds uprooted trees and ripped roofs off of buildings, with up to 50 centimetres of snow causing whiteout conditions. Our Katherine Ludwig spoke to drivers who got stuck in the storm.
Does anybody know where the road is?
Jeremy Laporte was headed home to Fort McMurray on Highway 63 Thursday evening.
I left Edmonton at about 5 p.m. and was at a complete standstill by 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Laporte was then stuck for over 23 hours.
I've been bumper to bumper.
300 vehicles were caught on the highway for nearly a day and a half in whiteout conditions, but RCMP say everyone is now rescued. Laporte says he had no food or water until a team from Crimson Automotive showed up.
The resilience that the community holds is probably the only reason I got water.
Crimson Automotive knew it had the means to help and then put the call out to the community with a big response.
We were able to fill 2 Jeeps with gas, food, fuel, water. The community really came behind us, and like I said, both Jeeps were loaded down heavier than they should have been.
The team also received $2,500 in donations, which was spent on jerry cans and gas. They were met with terrifying conditions on the highway.
There is a ½ inch of solid ice on the road, snow drifts 2 and 3 feet high on the roads, whiteout, less than an hour's drive. Was probably several hours to get down there.
Thank you. You're welcome. But their efforts were met with smiles and deep gratitude.
No matter what happens, we've been through a fire, we've been through the flood, we've been through countless ordeals, and this community, no matter what, pulls together.
Other people in Fort McMurray that I spoke with, including local RCMP, say that there were several different teams of people that loaded up vehicles and went on the highway to help. Katherine Ludwig, Global News.
A rock slide closed another Alberta highway between the town of Jasper and the BC border. The slide has completely blocked Highway 16, just west of Jasper. Parks Canada says it is now working to clear the debris, but that a structural assessment will need to be completed before that road can be reopened. Well, after a snowy spring, a warmer summer might sound like a welcome reprieve, but some early forecasts are warning that Canada could see a super El Nino in the months ahead. As Eric Sorensen explains, it could bring more extreme weather.
It's March that comes in like a lion. April is supposed to bring showers for May flowers, right?
I'm over winter. I'm ready for summer.
But the prairies got walloped with yet another snowstorm this week.
I'd like there to be heat. I want to quit wearing my winter coat.
Be careful what you wish for. Heat is coming, and then some, as El Nino pays a return visit this year.
Particularly through British Columbia, we're going to potentially see a very bad wildfire season. That's where we kind of have the highest degree of accuracy. But we're also looking at a warmer than normal summer in Alberta and potentially Saskatchewan into Manitoba.
Drought conditions in the southern prairies could be made worse by an El Nino-fueled heat wave.
Could be a bad fire season, but it could also be a bad smoke season, especially for areas downwind.
The first 3 months of this year were the 4th warmest on record for the planet. Now, we might not have felt that here in Canada. You can see that. It was colder than average because of the weak jet stream letting polar air flood over us. Now, what lies ahead depends on what happens in the Pacific. Here is the cooler La Nina current from 2021. Measurements taken in the mid-Pacific zone, Nino 3.4, shows the transition to the warm El Nino currents in 2023. This year, the University of Hawaii and others show a neutral El Nino in the spring, but the forecast calls for a stronger El Nino by June, more so by September, possibly a super El Nino before easing next year. A super El Nino could mean global temperatures 2 degrees Celsius above normal.
There's about 25% of chance that you have a very strong El Nino. It will be one of the most extreme El Nino events.
Yusin Wong says it could bring warmer temperatures to much of Canada, but also more extreme events, from atmospheric rivers on the west coast to wildfires and smoke across the country. El Nino is separate from global warming, but the two together could bring historic conditions over the next year.
The global impact of the El Nino and La Nina can be amplified, but because of the climate change, their related impacts, it can be severe, more severe.
Most Canadians cannot wait for the cold winter and blustery spring to disappear once and for all. But what's to come may not be welcome either. Potentially extreme weather that El Nino could prolong right into next year. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Wildfires in South Georgia have destroyed more than 100 homes and burned through more than 38,000 hectares. One of the fires is believed to have started after a balloon landed on a power line. The region is experiencing extreme drought with dry conditions and strong winds fueling the flames. The truck driver who caused the deadly Humboldt Broncos bus crash in Saskatchewan 8 years ago has had his deportation delayed. A federal judge granted Jasper Singh Sidhu a temporary deferral pending the outcome of an application to allow him to stay in Canada on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. Sidhu's lawyers argue his deportation to India poses risks to his mental health and the physical well-being of his young daughter, who has complex health issues. Sidhu was sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to causing the crash that killed 16 people. He was granted full parole in 2023. Sidhu is a permanent resident, so any prison sentence of more than 6 months makes him ineligible to remain in Canada. Well, whenever MPs take office, they normally have 120 days to disclose their assets and income sources to help avoid any conflicts of interest. But more than 360 days since the last election, more than 24 parliamentarians, including one cabinet minister, still haven't finished their proper disclosures. Our Jillian Piper looks at who is holding out and has reaction from their peers.
It's been nearly a year since Mark Carney unveiled his cabinet.
I share this responsibility with the members of Canada's new federal cabinet.
All of those members have publicly disclosed their and their spouse's financial assets, trusts, and other income streams, except for one.
That I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty.
Indigenous Services Minister Mandy Golmasty's financial disclosure is still missing 7 months past the deadline. Her office has provided no reason for the delay, only saying that she is working with the Federal Ethics Commissioner's office to complete her paperwork.
A reasonable time frame is when the damn thing is due. Get it together.
Ian Stedman previously worked for Ontario's Integrity Commissioner and says disclosures this late are unacceptable.
When we have public officials making decisions about the public purse, we would like to know that their decisions are in the best interest of the citizens they serve, as opposed to themselves, their friends, their family.
Golmasty is the only cabinet minister still missing a disclosure, but there are 26 MPs in total who the Federal Ethics Office says still need to submit additional information, including 14 Liberals, 9 Conservatives, and 3 Bloc Québécois MPs.
Yeah, I'm working with the office right now. I'm in conversation with them to finalize that.
This MP blamed tech problems.
What's the delay in your ethics disclosure?
Yeah, there's just been some difficulty with the website.
I'm in my 18th year and I've never had that problem.
NDP MP Don Davies not buying the excuses.
I think it sends a terrible message to Canadians, and frankly, they're also not in compliance with the law.
Parliamentarians of all political stripes agreeing members should comply.
I think it's important, if there are rules established with respect to complying with conflict of interest rules, that all MPs who are subject to the rules comply with them, absolutely.
We need greater enforcement of those disclosure deadlines.
The Ethics Commissioner could issue a penalty of up to $500 for late paperwork, but his office says he generally does not issue any penalties as long as the compliance process progresses, something this Conservative MP thinks should change.
Canadians driving too fast down the street get hit with fines bigger than parliamentarians who are found to have broken Canada's ethics laws.
The Federal Ethics Office says it is not unusual for MPs' initial compliance processes to take even longer than the deadlines mandated under the Conflict of Interest Act. Jeff? And that the length of time depends on the complexity of the public office holder's file.
Jillian Piper in Ottawa. Thank you, Jillian. The fight over fracking coming up. The fiery debate over onshore natural gas in Nova Scotia. Global energy markets in turmoil over the war in Iran. Governments are exploring new domestic energy sources. That includes Nova Scotia. Premier Tim Houston recently reopened the door to fracking for gas, lifting a moratorium on exploration. But as Heidi Petracek explains, the move has reignited debate about whether fracking is worth the risk.
You do know enough to know that it's much more fractured and irregular than in BC.
The debate over Nova Scotia's onshore natural gas is back.
We're just being steamrolled over by this government, and I'm sick of it.
Public information sessions held this week, part of a $30 million deal between Dalhousie University and the provincial government, meant to fire up the province's onshore gas industry, specifically shale gas, which requires hydraulic fracturing or fracking to extract.
We are now buyers of natural gas from Pennsylvania, which is basically hydraulic fracked
natural gas. We have to ask ourselves the question, can we do it safely? And first and foremost, is it recoverable?
This all started when Nova Scotia's progressive Conservative government lifted a decade-old ban on hydraulic fracturing last year. And in doing so, Premier Tim Houston reopened the doors to strong public opinion.
No fracking, no fracking. Another session got rowdy earlier in the week, leading the Premier to chastise protesters in an online post and insist
we'll be guided by the science on this. The science is what we will follow.
Economically, this is not a winner.
Opponents point to North American research flagging concerns over negative health effects observed in areas near fracking, including poor birth outcomes and respiratory issues. Then there's the thousands of abandoned gas wells the Alberta government is struggling to remediate, costing taxpayers millions.
Water, air, health, land, and climate. You know, despite what you're hearing from this project, none of those issues have been resolved.
Fracking has been done responsibly in some areas, and it's been done terribly in some areas.
This former Liberal Nova Scotia Minister of Energy instituted the fracking moratorium in 2014. He's not convinced enough has changed to make the case for it now.
They talk about there's this much potential gas onshore in Nova Scotia, then there's this much recoverable. The number they don't give you, because they don't know it yet, is what is commercially recoverable. And that's an even lower number.
No frack! No frack! Nova Scotians against the idea would rather fracking stay in the province's past. Heidi Petracek, Global News, New Glasgow, Nova Scotia.
Still ahead, a brewing battle over treaty rights between Métis and First Nations communities. A new bill moving through Parliament is stirring divisions among some of Canada's Indigenous communities. The proposed treaty agreement is set to give the Red River Métis more governance powers, but the Assembly of First Nations wants that bill withdrawn. Our Melissa Ridgen joins us from Winnipeg with the details. Melissa.
Jeff, the Red River Métis have been celebrating this week as a treaty with Canada has reached second reading in the House of Commons, but not so happy First Nations. They want the bill quashed, saying they weren't consulted, and a treaty with the Métis overlaps on First Nations treaties. Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak says the undefined territorial scope of the Red River Métis within this bill would set the stage for expansive Métis jurisdiction over areas that conflict with the existing rights and jurisdiction of First Nations. Most of Canada is covered by treaties. Adding a new one for the Métis Nation without specific geographical boundaries sets the stage for disputes between First Nations and Métis. The Métis, though, say this treaty is not about taking First Nations land or resources. This treaty would affirm the Red River Métis' inherent rights under Section 35 of the Constitution. Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand called AFN's opposition fear-mongering and in a statement warned Métis citizens to remain vigilant when consuming news about the issue. The Red River Métis considered the 1870 Manitoba Act their original negotiated treaty with Canada, but Canada didn't recognize the Métis as a nation then. So they see this as 156 years in the making. First Nations warn, though, of legal battles over it and have accused Canada not just of failing First Nations treaties, but now pitting Indigenous factions against one another with this bill. Jeff.
Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg. Thanks, Melissa. Up next, remembering a Quebec centenarian and civil rights activist, Ivaline Fleming. Welcome back. Black and Jamaican communities in Montreal are remembering a pioneer of civil rights. Ivaline Fleming has died at age 101. She spent decades fighting for marginalized populations dating all the way back to the 1950s. Phil Carpenter explains why her passing marks the end of an era.
Saturdays at the Jamaica Association of Montreal are always lively, but today the mood was shadowed by loss.
She was mom. She was mom to so many people.
Ivaline Fleming, civil rights advocate and community worker, passed away early Saturday morning. She was 101 years old. Youth advocate Brian Smith broke the news on social media, saying Fleming was a mentor to him as she was to scores of others, young and old.
Everything that I've learned and the skills I've learned in the community, I learned it from that lady.
Fleming, who immigrated to Canada from Jamaica, made a name for herself as a fighter for black communities in Montreal and across the country. She was a founding member of the Jamaica Association of Montreal, which started in 1962. She later became the first woman president.
And I think her coming out and advocating early on wanted to send a message to Montreal and across the country that we matter.
Her work began during the civil rights struggles in the 1960s in Montreal and Canada that saw events like the 1969 computer protests at what is now Concordia University. Politicians who knew her point out that Fleming commanded respect.
Well, it's the end of an era, really. Ivaline is the last of the leaders of the Anglophone Black Caribbean community that emigrated here from the 1950s to the early 1970s. She was a giant.
One of Fleming's signature achievements was the creation of the Jamaica Canadian Community Women's League, advocating for the rights and welfare of women across the city. She had a reputation for having high standards.
But she told me once, you have to be tough to get anything done, particularly as a Caribbean black woman.
Family members describe her as powerful.
She had that force to make you get back up. It's what I mean by being powerful. You know, it's like, no. No, you fell down, it's time to get back up.
They say Fleming always insisted that they do their best.
Regardless of what's going on, that's what she taught me. Weather the storm, get it done.
That sentiment remained true for Fleming 2 years ago in her message to youth during her 100th birthday celebration.
What you sow, you reap.
Those who knew her hope others will follow her example and honor her legacy. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Mount Benson, overlooking Nanaimo, BC. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.